This Three Beards Media podcast is sponsored by Revelton Distilling Company. When Rob and Chrissy Taylor started following the Kentucky Bourbon Trail in 2012, they fell in love with not only bourbon, but the entire distilling process. Just 8 short years later, in 2020, Revelton Distilling Company was opened, offering an entire family of products including vodka, gin, whiskey, and Revelton Shine. Come visit the tasting room at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, where you can sample one of their many spirits, including 4 gold medal winners. Can't make it to Osceola today? Not a problem, as you can pick some up at your local Hy-Vee or Fairway grocery stores. Follow Revelton Distilling on Twitter or Instagram at ReveltonDC or their website www.reveltondistilling.com.
This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Would you like to sample some of my nuts? All right. This is fun. I think this is a chance for us to do something new. And if we're trying to figure this out, I apologize for people who may be actually watching any stream for the video being a little bit wonky. We're still kind of figuring out the kinks on this. But anyway, this is Old Man Strength, a podcast of Three Beards Media, brought to you by Revelton Distilling Company, and we are broadcasting from the Betfred Sportsbook Studios. I am Tim Johnson, joined as always by Chris Shipley. Chris, how are we doing tonight?
We're doing all right. It looks like it's actually going to be spring outside, so I'm excited to enjoy the warm weather and get this week started. How are you?
We went from winter to 3 days of summer and then right back to winter, and so now we are in Minnesota spring finally, which means that it's going to be 50 and rainy until June, and then we'll have 4 of the most miserable months of heat, and then we'll go right back into the snow. So because I live in a paradise.
I still don't understand why you moved there, but then again, maybe I do.
yeah. Well, yeah, there is that. Anyway, yeah, it's been kind of a little extended break for our listeners, just because we've had things moving around. I have a lot going on. I'm trying to buy a house at the moment, as well as work being crazy with some staffing changes. So it's been a couple of weeks. it's been a lifetime in the past 10 or 12 or whatever days, and it will be for the next who knows how long. But it's good. It's good. Yeah. I don't want to fart around too much at the jump here. I want to be very respectful of our guest's time. And Chris, as always, I will let you go ahead and introduce our guest.
Yeah, so tonight we don't normally record on Sunday, but we wanted to accommodate our guest schedule, who was kind enough to take time out of his weekend to hop on with us. We have news anchor from Channel 13 here in local central Iowa, Elias Johnson on. Elias, thanks for hopping on Old Man Strength with us. We really appreciate it.
Hey, getting older as the day goes, so I feel like So thank you for having me.
If I would have flexed like that, I probably would have pulled a muscle. So
I'll feel it tomorrow.
But Elias, that was a short, tiny little intro. I know you've got a lot more credentials than that. We appreciate you. You know, you're on a podcast. It is professional. Dan McCarney called us professionals, so let's. We always like to remind our listeners of that. But
we're going to run that
to
the ground.
We are absolutely. So why don't you give people that may not know, be familiar with all of your credentials, your background?
Sure. I was excuse me. I grew up in Manson, Iowa. I was a farm kid. Grew up. That's just west of Fort Dodge, down Highway 7, about 16 miles, and went to high school here in the great state of Iowa. Class 1A. I was a golfer, a wrestler, a football player. Really loved the sport of wrestling a lot. I was pretty decent golfer though, so I did 2 sports when I graduated from high school at Iowa Central. I actually went on scholarship to golf at Iowa Central, and then I walked on the wrestling team, mostly because I gained my freshman 15 in like 2 weeks.
I gained that in 8th grade, by the way.
I was living with one of the star guys that was a big recruit out of Omaha. Was living with me in the dorm, and he'd go to practice, and he's like, "You should just come to practice." So I started doing that, and then I just fell in love with it all over again, because it was just a whole different level of competition, especially Iowa Central. You know, they're known for some of the big stars that don't quite qualify to go to a Division I school because they got to get their associates. And so the talent was huge. Competition was great. And so I really fell in love with the sport of wrestling. Still did the golf thing. But then when I had the chance after the first year to go to Arizona State after my first year at Iowa Central, I took that mostly because my teammate Cain Velasquez, who's a UFC heavyweight champion and has been in the news, in the last year or so, I to walk on with him. And so I did, and recruited him a little bit down at ASU, and was able to go to broadcasting school at the Walter Cronkite School. Did really well with that, and took my first job back here in Des Moines when Fox 17 was still doing news there. I was a cub reporter there, and went to Phoenix after that. Got out of the business. I was a PIO for a sheriff's office, then got back into the broadcasting in Reno, and then eventually was recruited to come back and work for WOI TV as the morning anchor, and left the business after 6.5 years again, had my own media company. And within the last 8 months, was recruited to come back again as the evening anchor at Channel 13. In a nutshell, it's kind of how I in a light warp speed version of kind of where I started and where I'm at now.
Was being a journalist and TV personality something that you thought you knew you wanted to do as a kid?
No, not at all. I'm actually a pretty good sketch artist, and I was going to go to the Brown Institute in Minneapolis when I was going to graduate, because I loved it. And I took at Iowa Central that first year, I took a lot of art classes, and I realized that was a hobby, not a job that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so I was 100% into wrestling. I didn't even know what I wanted to do. And it was my old man, my dad, that said, "You got to find a job, dude. You got to find a I'm not sending you to college to wrestle. You need to do something, with a career." And he suggested broadcasting. He said, "You're a decent looking guy." I got involved with high school speech my senior year at the request of a couple teachers that said, "You got charisma, you can do this." And, I was all state. I did phenomenal. I was way better at speech than I ever was in athletics. I broke all the school records in speech and improv classes and contests. And so I was like, it was more to appease him. It was like, all right, fine, I'll get into broadcasting. Well, the Walter Cronkite School is one of the top 5 journalism schools in the country. It's not easy to get into, but worked my way up and in. And it's funny. I actually won. I won the Heisman Trophy. There's such a thing. It's called the Hearst Award. I actually won that my senior year at Arizona State, and a lot of that credits to my old man. Giving me some guidance and direction on what he saw in me, and then from there, it's just kind of where it started. I I've had a great career so far. I'm really happy where I'm at. And, but no, I never thought I'd be a notable figure or anything like that. That I didn't really care about that. But, and I think that's what drives me. I could care less about being on TV. I really could. I would rather go out into public and not, just be inconspicuous and not have people come up to you in the middle of a conversation with a friend or a family member and say, "Hey, it's you," which I love. I love it. I appreciate it, because it means they're watching, right? And but it would be nice to be able to just go out on the town and let loose and not have to. I'm always very guarded when I go out. We just do dinners. We don't go out to the bar scene. Because I do like to have a good time. I'll tell you that.
Oh, well, we'll get into that. I read somewhere in some of the stuff that I read on you that part of your, I wouldn't say niche, but part of your, you didn't just want to be an anchor, right? You wanted to be able to go out and tell stories, right? So I think when you came back to 13, that was kind of your deal is I don't want to just sit at the desk. I want to be able to go out and meet people and tell stories.
Yeah. And I shoot all my own stuff, mostly. I do have and I'll always take one of the talented photographers we have at Channel 13, but at Channel 5 for that 6.5 years I worked there, I never had a photographer. So I went out and shot all my own stories and edited. And I got to learn from some of the very best in the country. When I was in Reno, I went to this NPPA conference in Norman, Oklahoma. And they bring in like the best of the best in the world to come teach and critique you and to make you better. And there's like 4 guys I met there that were all very accomplished photojournalists. One of them was Steve Hartman, On the Road. Mm-hmm. His main producer photographer, Les Rose, was there. And I got to spend a weekend with that guy learning how to be a good storyteller and why it's important and how to really embrace, what it is we do. And it's tough for some people to think about having to worry about video and audio and editing, and because you're just trying to make sure you're putting the story together right. But I think when you do it enough, you learn how to tell a good story through that video. The one thing you'll notice in all of my stories that I do, you rarely ever see my face. Just because it's not about me. So I'm just the narrator. I bridge the sound bites that we capture and stuff. So that's kind of my format that I use. But yeah, I mean, being just on the desk all the time would be boring. You're kind of one-dimensional even if you're good at it, right? And there's some people that just what they love what they do. But I feel like I'm a lot more impactful when I get to go out and actually tell some stories. And I've got one coming up this week on Friday. I'm going to be going back home to Manson to tell a story of a family whose his name was Buck Bleem. He's about late 50s, early 60s. About 4 weeks ago, he was killed working on a planter in his machine shed. Jack gave way, and he was the only one in there working on it. It pinned him against the machine shed wall, and it killed him. And his son, Alex, who was kind of his understudy at the family farm, found him. And I can't imagine what that was like. But he was such just a cool dude. I mean, he was like, loved Jimmy Buffett, loved having a good time. And so I was like, you know what? Instead of just running a news story, local farmer was killed, I'm like, let's go up. I'm going to do a profile about how his son is lacing up the boots. He's going to take over the family farm now. His cousin and his uncle are going to come help him get the plant, get the soybeans and the corn in. And so I'll be there Friday as they plant and interview his wife, and then Alex and the family, and then his best friend, who's the head superintendent in Manson, just about how cool he was. And that's where I feel like I make a difference and an impact, because I get to honor the life of somebody that I know personally was a good dude, but we get to show other people just the value of family, community. Agriculture is so big in the state, the love they have for it and the importance of it. But the fact that you honor people that are impactful, especially in small town Iowa, because, there's not a lot of people in town, right? And so when you lose somebody that's a key figure that everybody looks up to and loves, it's a great opportunity to be able to honor him. So, that's the next big story I'm going to do.
So Manson is probably what, 1,200 people? How big is Manson?
That's not a bad estimate. You know, I'm not. The census doesn't ever get much better. It usually just goes down.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm from a town of 2,700 people, so that's the big city. We were a 2A.
Yeah, you're big
Not
time.
to brag. But no, it is a very adorable town that very much feels. Yeah, I've been there, believe it or not. But it does definitely have a sort of feel a lot like just about any small town in Iowa in a lot of ways, and so those stories I think can be really relatable and really translate to a broader audience pretty well, I would think.
Yeah, and you know the challenge is telling in a way that does that. You know, but it's not hard, right? Like I've got all the characters I need to tell the story and the visuals, and I'm going to go up and I could have requested a photographer for this, but I think it's kind of weird for the family to bring in somebody they don't know. You know, it's kind of the one challenge with small town. There's a trust and there's a, you know, access that you get when they know you. And so I'm going to go up and shoot that myself and put it together. And, but yeah, it's, I love doing it. It's hard to do it every day because I have obligations to be on the 5, 6, and 10 o'clock news, right? But for one day, I won't be on the desk that day, and I'll just be shooting. And then in between newscasts for the next week or so, I'll be putting it together, and there'll be some promotions on it. And luckily, I don't have to do any of that stuff, which I used to do at Channel 5 too. But it's a great team that surrounds you, and I know it's going to be impactful and give you all the feels, right? The whole point of all the stories, you want to give you all the feels. And so I think you'll get them.
Is there something that you think about growing up in a small town like that kind of gives you a different sensibility to telling stories?
I just think you keep it real, right? There isn't a whole lot of noise. We wish there was more noise in small town Iowa.
I was to say there also aren't a whole lot of secrets in small towns.
No,
right.
No. It's like a fart in church, you know, anything you do, everybody's going to know about it. And I love it, though. I love going back home. My wife, she grew up in Connecticut, like 45 minutes out of Manhattan. She was a big city girl, right? And I remember when I took her home for the first time, we're driving down Highway 7. We're about to come into town. And she's like, "You said you're from a small town." And I said, "Yeah, I am." She's like, "You got skyscrapers here." Those? I said, "Yeah." I go, those are grain elevators. Elevators, there are offices on every floor. That's all full of grain. That ain't full of people. And so I still get a chuckle out of that.
Oh.
That was the difference between my wife and I growing up. And after going there meeting people, she's like, now I understand why you are the way you are.
which is sort of backhanded, sort of a little bit of both, like a
right.
good and bad. Yeah, no, I like that.
It just sounds like a typical wife response. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, but I can plead ignorance on a lot of things because of that too. I'm like, I small town kid. I don't know. I don't know. Sorry.
So you kind of mentioned, in the intro or whatever, like how many different places have you lived now throughout your life and career? Because you've bounced around a couple places, not just in Central Iowa.
Yeah, and the really cool part about every place I've gone is I was wanted, right? I had somebody reaching out to me saying, "Hey, we like what you do. We want you to come here." And so the big jump, and I needed it to happen because I was at 13. I mean, I was at Channel 13 before I left for Phoenix, and I just needed to make a career jump, and I had gotten some awards and been recognized, and my name was starting to get out there, and the timing was right, and I had written into my contract that it was supposed to be a 2-year deal, and right about the end of the first year is when I decided to go, and in my contract it was you can leave if you can get to a top 15 market. which a lot of places when you're a young person, they're like, sure, throw it in there. That's not easy to do, right?
Right.
Like put in the top 15 market. He's been doing this for a year and a half. And so when we had just had, not by plan, it was always part of the plan, but the timing wasn't this. We got pregnant 3 months after we got married, my wife and I.
Pretty cool.
And so we had
Yeah.
our son. He was born here in Des Moines, and you get that's just so much more pressure to provide, and and so I needed to get out just to I needed to provide. So when I had that opportunity, I went to Phoenix and I lived in Gilbert, bought our first house there. And it was a great timing because it was 2008 is when the move started happening. Of course, that's when the mortgage crisis happened.
Yep.
Everything melted down. Phoenix is a market that, right now it'd be unaffordable for us to go there based on equity we have in our house compared to what you get down there. And so we bought a house that was a flip that for like $180,000 in Gilbert, which is
that's unheard of.
That house is now worth $4.25.
Yeah, that's unheard of.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, trust me. If I could give younger me any advice, it would be to not buy the house I did in 2005, but wait 3 more years, for sure.
So we put our roots in there, and then I worked at the TV station, the CBS affiliate, for almost 2 years, and then I left a few months early because, again, I had the sheriff of Pinell County. I'd done some stories with him, and they needed a new media person. They needed somebody that could run a camera and go out and visually tell stories. Well, how cool is that, right?
Yeah.
It's like I get to be our version of cops with deputies, and oh my God, was that a cool job for almost 2 years, going out with federal agents and chasing down drug cartels and drug loads and stash houses and lookout scouts on mountains. And my wife hated it. She absolutely hated that I was getting embedded with these guys, but I loved it. I loved every minute of that and working with people in law enforcement. And so I still stayed in Gilbert while I did that job. And then our sheriff decided to run for Senate. And, you find out real quick that when you work for an elected official that your job security is it's not there, right? Like, you better hope the next person really loves you. And so I got out and I went to Reno because I missed the news business. I really missed the broadcasting and storytelling. And I was pretty good at it. And so I had the opportunity to go to Reno and actually be a news anchor in the evenings there. And I did that and did really well. And then I got recruited to come back to Des Moines. And, what a cool opportunity to kind of put down the, big boy roots, right? As a broadcast professional at Channel 5 when they rebranded it. And it's always nice to feel wanted, and they took care of me and gave me what I needed. And, it lasted 6.5 years until the company was sold, and then, had new ownership. And I just felt like it was a good time to leave and not get up at 3 a.m. anymore to go to work. And that last year that I've been doing my own thing has been great. But, you get an opportunity to take over a chair that John Bachman and Dan Winters sat in. You should probably take that opportunity. Yeah. And you get to work with Ed Wilson and Keith Murphy and Aaron Kiernan and Janae Town and Jerry Ann and everybody there. There's not one person, and I know this because we just had an employee survey. There's not one person that anybody looks at in that building and says, this place would be better without you. It's always the opposite. When somebody leaves, you're like, God, this sucks, because, those are big shoes to fill. And that's a nice problem to have, even though it's a problem. Right. That's the reality of where I work right now. It's like, how blessed am I to be surrounded with just awesome people that are great at what they do, and they take care of it.
That the people that have left here recently kind of leads me into a question that I had. Obviously you took over for Dan Winters. Dave Price just announced the last few days that he's going to move on. There's been a few other high profile people that have moved on. And from the outside looking in, your job looks really a lot harder than it used to be, with sometimes the attack on journalism and the integrity of journalists and things like that. Do you see that on your end? Tell me a little bit about what has changed in that industry Because I personally think that the right to a free press is probably one of the biggest things that we're in danger of losing because of the attack on journalism,
Yeah.
and the the attack on the truth.
I think the advent of network news stations really kind of screwed it up a little bit because I mean, when you turn on MSNBC, you know what you're going to get. When you turn on Fox News, you know what you're going to get. CNN, it used to be kind of the down the middle, right? And then we know that, especially with when Trump was in office, everything just got so. This is the line in the sand, and this is you're either here or you're there. And I try to tell people, I'm like, local news, like it's not like that, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't go into a story to pick. We don't pick stories based on what are people, what does the audience want to hear? It's like, what does the audience need to hear? What's important? There's still a very genuine journalistic integrity bedrock that exists with local news. And if you lose that, there's a reason I know that we're in the Constitution, right? Our profession is protected in the Constitution because it's important to be able to call out people and to challenge people. And because you're challenging somebody, it doesn't matter if they have a D or an R next to their name. You're challenging them because you want to know the answers and the truth. And because if something's going wrong, that impacts us all, right? Especially at a local level. And yeah, I mean, the coverage and the amount of people that watch network, and it's well done, right? I mean, it looks nice. You got good looking people. The picture looks good. The stories are very well put together, and local news, it's a little different, right? And so that's why I think people judge us and expect us to be like them, right? And I mean, you look at Dave. Dave's been accused of being a hardcore Democrat and a hardcore Republican. Like
Right.
he gets attacked on both sides. On any story he does because of the fact that he's maybe challenging somebody, right? Because it's his job. But
Right.
people make it so partisan that it does make it tough. And and it's not that Dave's not tough. That's not why he's leaving. He's just ready after 20 plus years. He just knows that he wants to go do something else. And I'm sure he's probably got something cooking. He's a smart guy.
Right.
Love Dave. He's so good at what he does. Again, big shoes to fill. I mean, you don't replace Dave. You got to try to find something new now. There's no replace. Just like there's no replacing Dan Winters. People are like, I'm not replacing Dan Winters. And Dan Winters didn't replace John Bachman. You don't replace somebody. It's just you're something new now, and hopefully what you do adds value, and that still makes Dan great. That makes Bachman great. That makes Dave great. You don't ever try to go into somewhere to replace somebody, and that's always been my mindset because we're different. We're all very different.
So I mean, you mentioned ownership group changing at Channel 5. I think one thing that I've noticed when I see changes in local news happen here in the Twin Cities, it's because of who ownership groups are and maybe activities outside of just journalism that they get involved in. Larger national brands are coming in and buying up a lot of these more kind of intimate, local or community connected pieces. Do you think that's something that is going to continue to have an impact on local journalism? And if so, what?
I think the biggest challenge with local stations is, not as many people are rabbit ears watching like they used to.
Yeah.
And so for the past decade, if they're smart, and they are because they're still relevant, they've been trying to find out how to monetize digital podcasts, video plays, advertising, selling advertising there, because the revenue dependent stream that used to be over the air has changed, right? And so you have to take a different approach. And I know our sales folks are, and even our news approach, it's like back in the day, it's like you never tweeted out or put out a story before you put it on air first. Well, now it's the opposite. now you go digital because that can lead people to your news channel, whereas you thought it'd be the other way around. And so it's been an evolution of where are you getting the eyeballs? Where are people watching?
Mhm.
Where's the opportunity to sell advertising? Right? 'Cause that's it's a business, right? We got to sell advertising. They don't have any impact on our stories we do or the choices we make, and sometimes we even have to report on places that do business with Channel 13, right? Whether it's Fairway, Hy-Vee, big brands, sometimes they have layoffs and stuff, and you still report on it.
Yeah.
You don't even question reporting on it. But the big change has been where can you find these revenue streams? And luckily, the political ad revenue has still been nice here in Iowa. I mean, kind of worried. I know people are kind of worried with the Democrats choosing South Carolina over Iowa.
Yeah.
First, that's a big hit. That's a really big hit. That brought in a ton of money, and I'm hoping that the Democrats still just choose to go first anyway, and they may lose some delegates, but it's in our state constitution. We have to go first. So I hope that they do that. I really do. I just think it's too important for our state, just on that standpoint. I don't think anything bad about South Carolina and their ability to pick a candidate but I don't think we do a bad job either. It's just different, and I like the tradition. And yeah, it would stink to have that revenue go away too. Because you base your budgets and your decisions off being able to have that come in, but luckily it still has been coming in, and Republicans are still here doing that, and so see what happens.
I think a lot of people that complain about the political ads, and there's no shortage of it. Even to my point, don't realize that when you don't have those, that can affect people's livelihoods and jobs.
Yeah, I mean it's part of our budget, right?
Yeah.
I always tell the salespeople, if I ever see a salesperson, I always say hi, shake their hand, because I know that if you're happy and we're doing something that you can sell, you're happy, right? Like you're the hand that feeds, and our sales team is fantastic. I love all those people as well, and they're working their butts off to find new partnerships and people that hopefully we can elevate through what we do. And it's always a partnership when it comes to that side of the building, which I'm obviously not involved in at all, and I don't want to be. But I'll support and tell them a hug or a five whenever I see them. Because, if they're not making deals, we're not getting paid.
Well, yeah. I mean, because you brought up the fact that people aren't using the rabbit ears anymore, and that's one thing that I think I hadn't really thought about. Right, so the impact of streaming services on TV in general. You hear a lot of people in television, like for instance, primetime sitcoms and dramas talk about how really good numbers today would have gotten you canceled immediately 10 years ago. Because people just consume things differently.
Yeah, they do.
With social media, people consume news differently. I certainly get more of my news from Twitter than I do from TV news programs anymore. It's just it has changed the way it has, and I hadn't really even thought about the impact, particularly on local journalism, because of the fact that we have all of these other ways to get that information. Because now there's not, we used to talk about like a 24-hour news cycle. News goes stale in a matter of hours, if not minutes sometimes, because people have already changed these things. And so you don't tune into the evening news to catch that up. By the time it's the 10 o'clock news, you probably heard about it in 6 different venues earlier. Yeah, it's just something I hadn't thought about.
Gone to digital first, because they're going to see it there right away, right? And that's what's changed, And we all know we don't like to be hamstrung by a clock, right? People don't carve out their day to be like, aside from my dad tonight, he's like, 60 minutes. We got to watch 60 minutes. Let's put the 60 minutes on. Turn off Disney Plus. Yeah, we're gonna watch 60 minutes.
Dad, we can TiVo that, or we can take that and play it back later, and then skip through the commercials. We can do all that.
But it's changed because people, if you want to know something, we're in a world where you can do it. You can search it and find it,
Yep.
the information, and it's changed. And the consumer, how they consume it's changed. I don't think they've gone away from wanting to understand and be informed, but they're not going to change their schedule around to sit for 30 minutes and listen. Now, weather is different. Weather is still one of the biggest things that people will tune in for. And because, you want to know, especially in our state, especially if you're a farmer or somebody that has to be outside, you want to know what it's going to be like tomorrow. So, but again, you can go to the website and see, that presentation as well. So the need to consume hasn't changed, but how they're consuming it has changed drastically, and it's still changing with the older generation, not being able to consume as much anymore, and then you got the new generation that's kind of hard to figure them out, and I don't envy the people that are in charge of researching that, because I don't know how the streaming thing works. I know we stream now on different platforms, but there's still agreements that have to be done, and there's, just like there has been with retransmission fees with cable companies that cover us. And so, I don't know what that side is like, but man, it's been a renaissance, I'm sure. And you have to try to just know what's going on, because you still running a business at the end of the day.
No, absolutely. Speaking of running a business, we are going to go ahead and take a quick second to get a word from our sponsor, Revelton Distilling Company. I do want to jump back in and learn a little bit more about the new landscape of news. As you see it, what you're excited about, what you're afraid of with all of this. So more with Elias Johnson when we get back from this break.
At Revelton Distilling Company, everyone has become a part of the Revelton family. From the Taylors and their daughter who helped perfect their award-winning gins, to the team who installed Lucy, our 33-foot-tall custom-made still, right down to the local farms that provide our coveted corn, and even the cows on those farms who consume our mash byproduct. Want to see the farm to flask come to life? Now you can tour Lucy and find out where we take Iowa's harvest and transform it into our finest spirits. Choose between a 45-minute tour or find out even more by scheduling a VIP behind-the-scenes tour to get the taste of the full Revelton experience. You can visit them at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, or find all of Revelton's award-winning spirits at any local grocery or spirits retailer.
I always say when we come back from a break, that welcome back in case you don't remember what you're listening to. But at this point, if you're this far into a podcast, you should probably remember what you're listening to. Although it is old man strength, and sometimes I think that Chris has already forgotten what he's participating in as well. So again, this is old man strength.
I don't even know what
our guest, in case you nodded off because Chris is so boring earlier. Our guest is Elias Johnson. Elias, we were talking right before the break about that new landscape of news consumption. I appreciate, first of all, I want to say, I appreciate your comment that people have not lost the appetite for this, right? If anything, I think there's a bigger appetite. It's just now having to figure out how to get that message out in a way that A, people want to consume, and B, probably more importantly, the way people can trust.
And I always I just had a conversation with my boss, my news director, the other day. People love their series on Netflix. They love to watch, the HBO, some zombie show that just came out. I don't know the name of it. I've watched
Last of Us, I think. The Last of Us.
And I watched that with my wife. I loved it. Great story.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Another great one.
Tim's last dating life.
Wow.
So I told him, I said, the reason why people love those shows is the stories, right? It's the storyline. And it's shot and edited very well. And so my challenge, even when I was at 5, when they were like, how do we get ratings up? How do we get people to watch what we produce? I said, you have to understand what people are expecting, right? It's got to look good, number one. But it also has to have a story structure. And even if, we're talking, you're watching a series on Netflix that's hours and hours long, people's attention spans are so little. Like, you better be good because they're going to give up on you real quick if it's not. I said, we got to stick to the script when it comes to a story and how to present the story. Like, don't try to reinvent a story structure, right? Have your characters, and we talk about that in post. After every newscast, we sit down and we talk about each story we did. What did we like? What did we not? Sometimes it's like, we'll look at a story that one of our folks produced, and it's like, there's no real people. Like, story structure wasn't there. Like, it could have been better. We have those honest conversations daily, and we follow up with those folks that are in charge of producing that content. You miss this, and you have to continue to do that, because I think the expectations of people are higher now on the quality, and they expect more, right? And so, if you want to captivate that audience and get them to follow you like a Netflix show or anything, you got to produce something that's quality, and you should always learn what makes the quality better. But you don't have to change the story structure. You still have to have the characters. You still have to have character development. You still have to have conflict. You have to have some sort of resolution or a what's next. I go back to, what's your favorite children's book, whether it's Green Eggs and Ham, or there was always a conflict, right? Dr. Seuss, I mean, dude always knew how to put a conflict in a story, right? And conflict resolution, like, it's the story structure should be up to a climactic, part. And so whenever I do seminars or talks with people, I'm like, just don't get away from story structure. You don't have to reinvent that. Our brains haven't evolved where we expect something else. We expect a story structure, right? But we also have to accompany that with quality video, tracking that is, conversational. I think that's why maybe when I stepped into 13, people were like, we kind of like this guy. He's okay. Because I'm pretty normal, like, on the air. Like, I'm kind of out there, but I'm corny, and I'm bad dad jokes,
Well,
I
then
make
you
fun
fit
of
in
myself.
perfectly with this podcast. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, those are great.
But you just, be real. Don't talk down to people. Don't use words people don't use. Real talk, and don't mess up the story structure, but produce it well. And, that it'll sell. We have people in charge of that'll sell it. As long as you have the ingredients, they can sell it. It's like a restaurant. If you got the good ingredients and you're making something good, people will come. It's up to them to figure out how to market it and sell it. But it's just been the changing scope of, like, well, where do we do that? Where's the best place to try to target selling all that now? Is it streaming? Is it over the air still? Is it cable? Is it digital? Is it, and again, I'm not involved on that side, and we can't legally or ethically, but I know they're on top of it, and they're researching the heck out of it, because there's still an appetite there. There's still opportunities to sell it. It's just a matter of, like, how do you do it? Where do you do it? And at the end of the day, all our salespeople that do business with people, they want them to succeed. They want them to see results. They want them to not feel like they just threw their money at something, right? And so, that's on our end to make sure that we're still producing quality stuff that people want to watch, and that our advertisers are proud to be a part of.
This question from Denny might be kind of close to what we're talking about here. How do you get viewers with the competition out there? And you've talked a little bit about that, but on top of that question, not only what Denny's asking, but how do you pick the right stories, right? You talked about the story in Manson earlier in the podcast. How do you know what's going to be a good story, and how do you go through the multiple options that you have and then pick something?
A lot of it with, so we all have kind of beats, right? So we have Zach Fisher, who's State House, Dave State House, and national politics. Roger Riley's big on small town Iowa stories, unique, and that dude will drive anywhere in the state. I mean, he'll be
he's all over.
I ask him, like, what does your playlist look like in your car, dude? Because you move the radio stations left and right as much as you drive.
We know a good podcast network he could download and listen to. We know.
Look at that, Chris.
See?
Bravo.
There you go. Thank you.
Well, we got people that know, like Janae has certain things that she focuses on. Erin Kiernan is doing a big series on autism right now because her son is on the spectrum, and it's been incredibly powerful storytelling. It's been unbelievable the amount of work and passion she's put into that, and even put herself and her family out there. So I think you stick to what you know, right? You play to your reporter's strengths and knowledge so that they, you got to understand. With reporters, it's like you don't have to know everything, but you better know something, right? You got to come off as at least being knowledgeable. And so a lot of it is like, what is the best? What's the best story for that person that day to be able to tell a knowledgeable, well-structured story that covers all the bases that people want to watch. And and sometimes something blows up or there's a chase and it changes and it's like, hey, we need to move you to here or whatever. And so breaking news is always that other element you can't plan for, fire or something. Sure. It usually gets a lot of views, right? That's something that people always tune in for, is like if something crazy happens, our numbers just go pew, up to the roof. And we monitor web traffic. And so we have a pretty good feel of what type of stories people like.
Yeah.
And we try to cover those in unique ways, but I love outside baseball stuff that maybe you don't even know if somebody. That's a great challenge, right? You don't even know if anybody's going to be interested in it. Like, how can I tell a story about paint drying or something? And I'll do it. And that's something that comes with doing it. Almost 2 decades now. Love that challenge. So, but I love to compete too. I love to challenge myself, and a lot of people that are in this business love that too. But, you just have to, whatever you do, you have to have the right attitude going into it. Like my attitude's always like, I'm going to knock the crap out of this, and I'm going to do it the best I can visually and just try to sell it. And another skill set you get as you get older, you're pretty good at interviewing people, right? You know how to get certain things out of people with asking the right questions, and it's tough when you're strangers, but
no way. Hey, I get it. Like, I look, I'm not saying that we may or may not have made a prominent athletic director cry on this podcast, but I think
twice.
Yeah. But I think there is kind of that aspect of, man, part of what makes something compelling is that people care. Like you said, it's about the narrative, right? How do you really get people to care? People love reading books and watching movies and watching streaming shows and all of that because there's conflict, there's resolution, there's some sort of kind of rapid denouement to kind of wrap things up. Not everything in the news industry always has a perfect little bow, but it can always go to something next, right? You can think about what your cliffhanger is or whatever it is, and it still kind of has those types of moments. Who do you look up to in this industry? Like who are some of the people, whether they're local, they're national, they're whatever, they're historic, who kind of helps inspire you to do those things?
I mean, not to be cliche or sound like I'm kissing ass, but I look up to everybody I work with at 13. I adore Keith Murphy, Ed Wilson, Erin Kiernan. They show up every day and they prove it, right?
Yeah. Well, and people like Ed and Keith have been at that station and at what they're doing forever. Like they're not just mainstays; they're household names at this point.
Yep, and they care about what they do, right? I mean, they care obviously because they want to keep their job, obviously, but they wouldn't be doing this if they didn't care about it. I mean, those guys could both go on and go to other places. Keith's had multiple opportunities to go to ESPN. I mean, this was back when ESPN was in the heyday, right?
Yeah.
How do you turn that down, right? How do you turn ESPN down back, in the last, 15, 20 years ago when, I mean, he could have said, this is what I want and gotten it, right?
Yeah.
Like he cared about his kids, his family. He cares about his community. That says a lot about who Keith is. Ed's the exact same way too. He's got the charisma, the ability to go wherever he wants, chooses to stay here. Aaron's the same way. So I really look up and I really adore my colleagues, and that is 100% the reason why I chose to get back into this business at 13, because I was sad and I was just over it when I left the last place. Um, but I was excited to work with. I knew I'd be in a good place. I knew I'd be in a place where people got your back and they're gonna allow you to be you, do you. I know they liked me and they wanted me, and that was a big part of it. But nationally, Steve Hartman, I think, is my all-time favorite reporter. I think he's the best storyteller I've ever come across. I wish I could just meet him and talk with him over a beer for an hour, about his life. But there's also some amazing photojournalists that if I could be half on air and as good on air as they are shooting a visual story, and they could shoot a story without me tracking anything and just put together a story with sights and sounds, they'd probably be better without me in some instances. Clint Gyrus, Brian Pfizer, Britta Kagi, Brandon Bingham. I mean, they're the real deal. And to be able to, I wouldn't be where I am without knowing those guys, and without seeing their work. And the fact they've taken time to collaborate with me and ask me about things. I don't know. It's hard to, I got a long list of people that are a big reason that I'm where I'm at, because I to this day look up to him, because I knew I wouldn't be who I am without him,
Yep.
Bachman was another one, which is how classy he was. I don't know. It's been awesome. So those are the folks that just come to my mind, though, that I really look up to. Eva Anderson up at Care 11. I worked with her at Channel 5, and I got to mentor her. And I joked with her, I'm like, her biggest thing was like, I want to win an Emmy. I really want to win an Emmy. Won 4 Emmys, and I want to finally win an Emmy. And I said, all right, and so we worked together on a few things, and she's an MMJ. She shoots her own stuff. She gets out there. We went to the Emmys 2 years ago, and I was up for a couple, and she was up for like 6. I think she won 3 at least that night. I didn't win any. And I was like, all right, John, you're now better than me. You've taken this too far, Eva. But she's another person I really look up to. And you should check her out up in the Twin Cities, because she's awesome. She's amazing, and she looks up to Boyd Hupert's another one that I adore.
Oh, Boyd Hupert is just absolutely a legend. For people that aren't familiar with Boyd Hupert, that man is a storyteller.
I've won 4 Emmys. He's won over 100.
Yeah, literally over 100. The man is amazing. I've been lucky enough to get to know some news and media personalities here in the Twin Cities, and I don't think there's a single person that has a bad thing to say about him in any way, shape, or form. And they all look at him as kind of
he is who he is.
Yeah, and he's sort of the elder statesman of storytelling here. But one thing that Chris and I had talked about that I wanted to ask you about, and not to say that like Twitter is the be all end all of the universe, but we've seen over Chris kind of alluded to this earlier, when he was talking about the degradation of trust in the press. We certainly saw a previous president use literally the Nazi slogan of the Lügenpresse to discuss the press. We talk about this on Twitter and what is going on with the loss of blue check marks, and the literally anybody can pretend to be anyone else at this point, and there just seems to be, we're in this kind of this weird state right now where and we saw with the whole QAnon stuff and the Pizzagate before that of goes back to the phrase alternative facts, right? We just have kind of an ever-growing culture and a continued growing culture, and the blue check marks probably is maybe the most kind of recent thing of there are things where people feel like there's more than one truth, and ultimately you're in the truth-telling business. So how do you guys in the year 2023 and everything that we have combat that?
I think it boils down to the bedrock why we do this, right? We're trying to find the truth, right? And yeah, it's been tough. I mean, when Trump was attacking the media, he wasn't attacking local media. He was going after network media, because they had such an appetite to challenge him. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have challenged him, but I think there was some obvious bias going after the guy at some things. But he stoked a lot of trickle down, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, we'd be at events. I know that we've been at a couple rallies, and he invites the media there, and then he goes, he points back and he's like, the media, there they are, and then they get booed, right? It's a crappy feeling as like a local TV guy. Like, you're like, especially when you're in Des Moines,
Yeah.
Right.
these people are your viewers. They turn around and boo you,
Yep.
And it's
Yeah.
like, what did I ever do to you? Right?
Right.
Like, I like to think that every day I work for you, and I'm with you. I'm trying to help you understand what's going on in the world around you, because you're busy, right? You got your job, you got all this stuff, but here's a resource. You can go on to our news channel and you can see what's going on and trust that it's true, right? That's the bedrock of what we do is truth, right? You have to have trust. And if you lose that trust, just like anything in life, good luck getting it back, especially in today's age, because everything lives online forever, right? So
Yeah. Right.
you better make sure what you're doing is multi-sourced and factually accurate, and you better question even the stuff that they're telling you that maybe even you think you believe is fact too, but you just can't get so bought into this need in today's world of like being first and being so fast on Twitter and on Facebook and on posting something, because like once it's out there, man. You can't take it back. And even when you correct it,
Yep.
algorithm, that first thing you put out there, it's almost like what you put out to correct is going to be on the back page. Nobody's going to see it
Because everybody's reacting to the first tweet.
Exactly. And then they're going to call you a liar, and they're going to, you've lost it. And it takes a lot to get back. I think of that a lot. I'm very careful with what I say when I'm on air. We like to have fun and joke around, but you'll notice there's certain topics and stories when we come out of, I don't say anything.
Right.
It's like, we'll be back another check of your forecast after this. Because what I love to do is come out of have that moment with Ed or Aaron or Keith where we get to talk and laugh, like those organic, real, right? It's real reaction. But I mean, there's some stories where you're like, not even gonna go there, because
Yeah.
you're gonna piss somebody off because they're gonna read your body language or what you
They'll infer something.
said it, and they're gonna think you were doing something that maybe you weren't. And so I'm very careful, which I know would surprise some people I work with, because they know I don't take myself overly serious. I really don't. I don't think I'm a Ron Burgundy big deal at all. I just like to have fun.
You wouldn't be talking to us two jackasses if you took yourself too seriously. So
I'm not saying that I have had some really good things to say coming out of some of the national stories. Most people would probably laugh at, but it's like, I'm not even gonna rock. I'm not gonna rock the boat.
Right.
I'm not gonna rock the boat. I'm just not gonna do it. And so, it's tough. It's a really tight rope nowadays, because you're trying to. I try to put myself on the other side of the camera, like somebody watching at home. Like, how are they going to interpret what I'm saying? And I always go back to, I always feel like I'm talking to my people back home, in small town Manson, Iowa, and how would they react to what I'm saying, or and so I try to keep it real. I try to keep it fun and just relatable, not a stiff, I like to look nice and wear a tie and pocket square and nice hair and all that stuff. But, people that know me, they always say like, God, you look good, like you never looked that good growing up. Out here and, broken noses and stuff. And
No, I was thinking earlier when you said that your dad said you should go into broadcasting because you're good looking and things like that. I was like, well, my dad would always say that, but that's only because I look exactly like my dad. So the only reason he would ever say,
people are saying I'm looking more like my old man, and I'm like, yeah. But, I grew up as a kid helping him pull pigs and cows and horses and helping him on calls and stuff. And I think that's probably the number one reason why I decided I didn't want to be a veterinarian. Sometimes like, dude, you hate your life. Like, we're watching a golf tournament or NFL, we're Vikings fans, and so you can have some more pity on us. But it's
we'll get to that.
We'd be right in the middle of watching something. It's like the call comes out, we got to go, and then a cow, has a prolapsed uterus when the calf comes out, and it's like a 1 hour delivery turns into 5 hours of trying to save the cow. And it's like, and he'd be so pissed. And I was like, I don't want to do that, So yeah, I think he also steered me away from, I think he kind of steered me away from what he did because he's like, dude, this is tough work.
This sucks.
I've broken 4 noses in wrestling. That dude's broken more bones. He broke his back being kicked. I'm like, you get physically assaulted by your clients, like you've been doubled up by a rodeo clown by your clients when they get out of the chute, like that is a tough way to live.
I worked on a dairy farm in high school. My daughter's mom is a horse vet. My daughter very much wants to be a veterinarian, and I don't discourage her from anything whatsoever. But there are sometimes, because I remember like having to leave events, like having to leave Thanksgiving dinner because horses notoriously can't vomit, and so they get colic and they thrash themselves around and they get all tied up, and my daughter's mom would have to leave like at 11 o'clock on New Year's Eve. Like that's not a fun way for anybody to live on any of those things.
And I felt like I got roped along because my dad was he didn't have a partner with him for a long time, and so a lot of times I got brought along.
He was you,
not because it was like, hey, do you want to come along? It was more like, get your boots, we're going, because I'm gonna need you to keep getting the bucket full of warm soapy water, to help.
Yeah, I mean,
and I never got
my daughter's almost 8 and she's already seen some pretty dark shit. Seriously.
Yeah. I've seen things that whoa. And I mean, I was a kid, right? I was a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
You see a prolapsed uterus coming out of a mama cow after she gives birth. It's what is that?
Yeah, no, that's
and I'll never
terrible.
forget. I'll just tell you real quick. I'll never forget the first time I saw that. My dad, he's sitting there and he had to put a latch on to the calf to, he had his crank out and he's sitting there cranking this thing out because it's everything's swollen. It's not coming out.
Yeah.
I remember the calf came out and everything else came out with it. It's like, it's like the balloon went inside out. And I just remember him going, son of a bitch. And I looked over and I was like, oh my God, what is that? And that's when a little 1 hour trip to deliver a calf turned into a 4 hour deal of trying to save mama,
Oh yeah. No. My daughter knows that between her dad working on a dairy farm and her mom being a vet, that both her parents have been shoulder deep inside of an animal. And so absolutely. So there's very few things that can shock her in any way, shape, or form. Which I'd like to think is making her stronger. I hope not traumatizing her.
You know what's funny?
What's that?
I described kind of what I saw when we had our first child, and
I knew you were gonna go here.
and I was in there, and I'm ready to go because this was we had to have her induced. My wife, she was like 2 or 3 days over, and it was close to Thanksgiving, so the doctor's like, we're doing it this day because I'm going to Thanksgiving and I'm not going to get called out,
Yep.
And so it's nice for MDs because they can plan, deliveries. And
Yep.
so we went there and so they were going to induce her, and they did. And then it was time for the epidural. And, I never thought twice about being in the room for that. And so
Yeah.
the guy came in. He's like, "Hey, do you want me to call the nurse in?" Because my wife was sitting at the edge of the bed, and he was behind her on the other side of the bed. And he's like, "Do you want to hold her? Or do you want the nurse to come in?" And I'm like, "I got this. This is my wife. I got her." So she had her head right here in my chest, leaning forward. I'm holding her, so I see everything, and I saw the size of that needle. And they put right into her spine.
Oh,
And I remember they put it in there, and I was like, "Ugh." Huh. I was like, "All right, here we go." Here we go. And I remember they pulled the needle out after they got it in, and there's this little spurt of blood that came out.
oh.
And I remember going, "Oh, that's messed up." And I remember blackness just
Oh no.
I passed out, and the delivery rooms at where we were at, I think it was Mercy. It's hardwood floors. And they said it sounded like a bowling ball hit the my head and I was out. I was completely out. And they had to rush in, put me on a gurney, and take me to ER. It was that bad. And so I was in the ER,
Wow.
my wife.
Wow.
And again, I'm pretty sure the doctor was like, "Son of a bitch." When I passed out, because I was trying to hold her and she started falling forward. So we had to grab her and they had to redo it. It was terrible. But my dad got the call. It's like, "Hey, you better get down here quick. Your wife is going to be in labor here in a few hours, but your son's in the ER now. We're trying to revive him, but
She's
She's
got a
like,
severe concussion.
Yeah, I'm sure your wife is like, "You always have to one up me,
Right?
you son of a."
I hear that to this day. But the stuff I saw on the farm, it still couldn't prepare me for an epidural.
Oh man.
Oh, that's so funny.
I
Well,
still made it in time for the delivery, and I
So
was
you
there.
rallied.
I saw all that.
You
See,
rallied.
I saw all that, and I had no problems. But there was something weird with the epidural that just the room. I'll never forget it because I've never fainted before. I just remember it just went dark from the outside in. It was like a 16:9 screen, and then I remember just going la la la, and then bam,
Okay. Well, so I think this probably leads to uh, uh, some life advice. So part of what we like to do on this is because Chris and I know everything, very clearly, is we like
Clearly.
to also administer advice, but really our guests are the ones who administer advice. So I'm going to go ahead and let Chris introduce a question that I want you to think about. We're going to take a break because this question is brought to you by our sponsor, Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage. And I want him to go ahead and introduce this, and then we'll hear some words about Kyle and come back and you can answer this question. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and tease this thing right now?
All right. So your question, Elias, is it's 2023. You have a time machine that you can go back 10 years. What piece of advice are you going to give Elias Johnson in 2013?
So Kyle, I know you have a new program that is targeted at buyers that are doing a new construction loan or buying a new construction house. Can you touch on that, please?
Yeah, so right now, it started at the beginning of March. It goes through the end of June, so June 30th. If you go under contract or you lock a rate with us on a new construction home in Iowa, you'll get 1% of your loan amount back in closing costs up to $3,500. You can use that to pay closing costs. You can use that to buy your interest rate down. It's really there for you to use however you want.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, we're back. Elias, that gives you about a good minute here to think of an answer. What's your answer?
Advice I'd give to myself 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Get over yourself.
Ooh,
I think that's the big thing.
I like that.
And the reason I say that is I think I had just gotten to Reno by then, right? And I was the evening news anchor. And I let things bother me that I shouldn't have, whether it be schedule or, and I'm talking about the impact on my family.
Mm-hmm.
I would take stuff home. I would take frustration home. Um, and I would never take things out on them, but indirectly I was not present. And I let that carry over when I was at Channel 5, and it wasn't anything at Channel 5 that sucked. It was just the hours, like, right, getting up at 3 a.m. and it was fine for a few years, and then we had our youngest child, Michaela, who's 4 now, and man, was that tough, like trying to balance just sleep, and that's tough when you do the job that I've chosen to do, right? Like, I'm supposed to be on, and I'm supposed to be, hey everybody, like I'm starting off your day, right? I'm Mr. Cheery, like everything's great. But everything wasn't great, and a lot of it was just because physically it was a really tough thing, and I got pissed off about it, and um, I don't think I appreciated the fact that I was doing what I was doing. I just looked at the negatives and gave myself excuses to be distant when I should have been present, and I wasn't as supportive to my amazing wife, who is, I mean, she's moved all over the country for me and for my job. I mean, granted, I always told her I'm going to be the provider, but she was also very successful in real estate. She got into the real estate game in Reno. And I mean, if we would have stayed there, she would have been making 3 times as much as me. Right. But I told her, hey, let's go back home, better opportunity for the kids, whatever excuse I could come up with. And she walked away from something that was going really good for her. Right. And, and I don't think I thought of that a lot when I was having pity parties about how crappy I felt, about getting up early and having to take care of my kid, when I want to take a nap. And so if I could go back 10 years ago, dude, get over yourself. Get over, you have to understand how important the people at home are and how important it is to be present and engaging with them and not disconnect and want to go upstairs and lay down when you should be downstairs reading to the kids, playing video games with them, being a part of their life, which luckily we've changed, and a lot of it's because of conversations. And here's what's fun is people look at you look at Facebook and everything's like, I got the best life, right? I post all the greatest things ever. My wife and I, we have a fantastic marriage. Been married 15 years now. We've been to marriage counseling, I think 3-4 times, right? And it wasn't because we were thinking about getting divorced or whatnot, but it was like something was missing, right? And a lot of it's because I couldn't get over my own crap, and having that outside voice looking in, and also with her being able to communicate with me in an effective way that didn't make me want to shut down and get angry, and get over yourself, like there's a bigger picture. There's a more important thing. And so I tell people that, I'm like, when they're having troubles, I'm like, dude, you should go to marriage counseling. And they're like, we're not going to get divorced. I'm like, I know, that's why you should go.
I mean,
if you're going to save a marriage, like, you might be too far gone,
Yeah.
So, I'm open with that too. I tell people, like, it's okay to ask for help. I still go to counseling individually now.
Yeah.
Because I've got life stuff going on. My mother's had Parkinson's for 14 years, right? She's deteriorating. It's hard to see, it's really hard. And I don't know how to, my wife always says, like, you never cry about that. I want to, but I don't know how to.
Right.
So I still go to counseling just to be able to talk with somebody. Right.
That's a great answer, Elias. We Bill Blank and I started a series 2 months ago about men's mental health. Kind of the same thing what you just talked about. You can look at people's lives and look and think they're just going along great and they don't have any problems and so on. And it maybe detours people from getting help on their own. So, to be open about that kind of stuff, that kind of fits right into what we talk about on that podcast is, being able to be open about it and let other people see your vulnerability so that they can get help too. So
It's okay. It's healthy. You should. Nobody's that tough. Like, right, I was a Division I wrestler. I know I'm tough. I know I'm tough, but it's up here that sometimes you're not that tough, right? You got to be able to process things in a healthy way. And my big thing was just, I got to be present for my kids and my wife who love me. And I have to be the best for them because they're job number one. Love my job, love doing what I do, but it doesn't matter without them, right?
Yeah.
So taking care of home and just being honest with yourself when you're not maybe feeling right. I've got this gal, Felicia, I talked to. She's amazing. She's able to call out the bull crap, and I respect her. And she's helped us. In fact, another couple that we know really well, they were having really serious marriage issues, and they went to her, and they're great now. They're great, and they know that they may have to go back someday too. It's not like you get fixed too. It's not like, all right, now I feel great. I may have new stuff that comes up next month. I may need to go back and talk to her again. And so I think the realization that you're maybe not always. You're not always as tough as you think you are. And you don't have to be.
Yeah.
You don't have to be is the big thing too. Like there are people that can help you process things because if you're not, if things aren't going well. And my wife's dancing around in the background through my office window right now, making faces at me, acting like she's mooning me, that's our life. But I need to be the best person I can be for them. And I need help for that sometimes. I'm not the greatest person in the world.
I think mental health is health, and sometimes people forget about that. You probably go to the dentist once or twice a year, right? And you're not going to the dentist because no, it's kind of like when I lie to my dentist about how often I floss. But the reason why you're going to that is not just for I have a toothache, I need to go to the dentist, right? You're going for maintenance and preventative maintenance, right? And I think sometimes people look at something like therapy, talking to a counselor, whatever, as like disaster recovery, and not everything is like some triage thing when it comes to mental health or your collective mental health as a couple or as a family. Sometimes what that literally is just doing the right thing for your health, right? And sometimes that means preventative maintenance. Sometimes that means I do this so I don't end up in the emergency room someday with XYZ health problem. It's hard for people to kind of get their heads wrapped around that. And so I appreciate you being very open and honest, because again, as Chris and I have said several times, we're very much advocates for that type of mental hygiene is very important as well. But also just to kind of talk about how we all need to understand that everyone is going through something.
Yeah.
Everyone is going through something. And no one knows what I'm going through, right? So I don't give anyone else the courtesy that I expect them to give to me. And that's silly, but that's just the reality of the way our brains work. I'm not in your head, so the only thing I can think about are my own thoughts, right? So I really appreciate you saying the idea of get over yourself, and just the idea of understanding that all those things that we take for granted, that, we know each other, we love each other, we know how to communicate. Well, no. every communication is one of those things that on the surface feels like it's really easy, and it seems to be one of the hardest things to do. So finding help and finding other resources is always paramount to anything that is successful, whether that's telling a great news story, whether that's trying to get through a podcast with Chris Shipley without making fun of him a billion times.
It's
Like
hard.
what you need, like you need to lean on others for success. So
You know, and I
appreciate that.
brought up in some of those sessions too. Like I've seen some trauma, right?
Yeah.
On my job. I've seen,
Yeah.
especially when I was in the PIO office, I talked about how cool it was, going out and chasing down bad guys and stuff. I've also seen kids. I saw a mother holding her dead child in an ER after it was caught in a flash flood, because I had to go there to try to communicate with the family that the media are out there and I wanted to shield them. But I walked into a room that I wasn't prepared for, right? And I still remember what that was like. And so I've seen a lot of, even in news, you go to a scene and it's rough. And that it stays with you as much as you're just like, it's just a job, you cut it off. And I look at our folks in law enforcement, firefighters and EMT that, that God bless all of you that do that, because you see things that you can't unsee and it affects you, whether you think you can turn it off or not. And it doesn't have to be something traumatic like that either, right? Even at work, there could be something that happens that just really affects you, that changes your perspective on things in a negative way, that you should talk to somebody about, and help you process how you feel, how you're feeling it, because you're worth it. Right? You're worth it. You're worth it to feel good and to try to understand and try to move forward. It's always about moving forward. That's one of my big things.
100%. We're gonna kind of switch gears and talk a little bit fun stuff, and we know you got to get out.
Good. I'm ready for that.
Yeah. So one of the interactions that you and I had on Twitter was I think a tweet about the best looking football stadiums to watch a game from, and I think that's where I learned that you were a graduate from Arizona State and that you were a big Sun Devils. I actually lived in Phoenix when I was a freshman in high school, probably a couple miles away from the ASU campus. So I'm quite familiar with that. I guess what I got to ask is do you want them to come to the Big 12 so that you can see your Sun Devils get their ass kicked in Cyclone Stadium and Jack Trice Stadium? How's that?
You're such a dick.
Mackenzie, could you please isolate that sound clip for
Mackenzie's
me?
not on here. I'll isolate it for you. I'll pull it out for you.
I grew up a Cyclone, right? My dad went to vet school at ISU. My brother, who was 4 years older, went to ISU. My younger sister, 2 years younger, went to ISU. My path was different, and we already talked about that, of why I went to Arizona State. And my mom did go to Iowa. We don't hold that against her. He's a Cyclone fan, diehard. And it is hard. It is hard to grow up. I still have more Iowa State stuff, I think, than Arizona State stuff. I do. But I wear Arizona State stuff a lot more than I wear Iowa State stuff. Whatever is going to help put that school, because I'm 100% in at ASU. I kind of feel like they've been, anybody in the Pac-12, it's like they've been all these other moves in the Big Ten and other conferences. And the Pac-12 has just kind of been, just sitting there. Like, I don't know. I just don't see the moves, or I kind of feel like they're going to be the next one to have to dissolve, because I know they're trying, but you lose USC and you lose you're losing your big money schools, and ASU is one of them. But because our enrollment, ASU, it was always, when I was going to school there, Ohio State and Arizona State were the two, number 1 and 2 enrollment, right? Overall enrollment, biggest schools in the NCAA. And for some reason, our athletics haven't been great. Other than wrestling's always been really good, but we're talking about, revenue generating sports like football.
Right.
Like, gal dang it. How is it that you have one of the biggest universities in the country, but yet we're not in an even top 25 discussion, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's why there hasn't been any invitations that have been public, right? About, hey, why don't you come to this conference or whatever? And what a great place to have a fan base come and go to a game. I mean, there is no better environment than Sun Devil Stadium, tucked between two mountains, a mountain that we used to run up after weightlifting, and I've thrown up on 2 or 3 times.
I'd have thrown up just looking at that mountain, thinking about
And
running up
it's
there.
not even that big of a mountain.
I threw up on Camelback once.
That's a proper mountain, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's at least a real one.
A mountain's
but
like pre-kindergarten compared to
It's like Tim size. It's like Tim size.
Wow, wow, classy.
You're not running up Camelback Mountain.
No. I tried to. Well, that's funny because someone was running way faster than me up Camelback, and they were in much better shape than I will ever hope to be. But yeah, no, I remember one time reading, because I used to be more involved in the alumni chapter of the Twin Cities from Iowa State, that Phoenix has I think it's like the 3rd or 4th largest alumni population outside of Iowa.
Oh yeah, it's
from
huge.
Iowa State.
Iowa in general, just snowbirds in general are a huge population down there. So.
Yeah. And a lot of that too is ASU was really early on with getting online degrees. Do ASU online, and a lot of people make fun of us for that, and it's the brunt. I hate that, when you look at Family Guy or some of these movies where like, oh, Arizona State, you gotta have a pulse to get in, it's like, no, I mean, I can't describe to you the experience that I had when I went there. I mean, it's summer year long, basically, right? The weather is, you get over 300 days of sun a year. And when I was a senior, I lived at a apartment complex that was called Archstone. It's something else now, but Playboy magazine came because they used to come out with top party schools of each conference. And we were the Pac-10 back then. And I date myself because I have a Pac-10 championship ring. And everybody's like, Pac-10, it's like saying Big 8.
Oh, yeah.
People are like, how old are you? But it was Pac-10, and Playboy came to do their centerfold at our apartment complex. We had a waterfall feature into the pool. I was there for that.
He has the issue at home.
What's funny about that is that, we knew they were going to take a big picture. And so they brought the playmates out, and they had football players that, I'm 5'7", and I wasn't tall enough. The water would have been here on me, right? I was out. I still look good. I mean, I was a chiseled machine, but you had these big, 6'2" to 6'5" guys, and you had these playmates on their shoulders, and of course, they didn't have their tops on. But the big thing was like, hey, let's get in the background because all the students were on the rock waterfall feature behind, and I was kind of like one of the liaisons there. I was pretty well known, and I had a lot of really good friends there. And so I had a spot on the waterfall because I wanted to be in the picture, right? I wanted to be in the picture. And we had a beer bong, and I said, how cool it'd be during the picture, somebody's doing a beer bong. Like, I'm not gonna do the beer bong, but I'd love to hold the beer bong. And so we're there and we're getting ready, and the guy that I was up there with, who will remain nameless, we had it all loaded with the beer, and he went too early, right? So then it was like, well, it's gone, so I panicked, and I'm like, all right, it's right back here. And I jumped down and didn't realize how many people there were in the way. And so I ran back to try to get more beer to get back up and put in the beer bong so that we could take the picture. And by the time I got back, they'd already taken it.
Oh,
and so the cover, and I can find it, but there's a picture of everybody, and there's just a guy holding an empty beer bong like this up in the air. And I'm probably somewhere behind the rock, just pushing people like, get out of my way. But that was my college experience, and I I did get good grades. I was an all academic. Like, I was not a dumb kid. I still studied and stuff. I did have some friends that went on spring break and never came back too, though. But
So
it was a cool university because it's such a collective of other people from other states. There's not a lot of students from Phoenix proper that go to ASU.
Yeah.
The majority of the student body is from Ohio, Minnesota, everywhere you can think of. But they all love to go there because it's such a cool place to go. And everybody else that's there, I feel like they're kind of over it, and they end up going to, for a lot of them, they go to U of A, which is disgusting. But
yeah, somewhere in there is a joke about going early and a bunch of Playboy playmates, but we'll let that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I want to get into our last segment, so we can let you go.
Yes.
We do have a segment on here, brought to us by our friend Steph Copley. Chris, I will go ahead and let you introduce this segment.
So Steph Copley from Cyclone Fanatic and the We Will Collective, she was on the podcast, and again, as usual, as you can tell, Elias, Tim never shuts up. So Steph told Tim and I that we had to STFU while she had something to say. We decided to sponsor that in a weird way, so we're going to play a little ad, have a little QR code. If you feel the need, scan that code if you're watching it, and we'll have a link in the bio to donate to the Young Women's Resource Center in honor of Steph Copley. And then when we come back, Tim and I will shut the F up, and you get to say whatever you want, and we can't say a word. So we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Steph Copley, the woman behind the STFU segment on the Old Man Strength podcast. When I told the guys I wanted to sponsor this segment, they recommended that I make a charitable donation instead, so that's what I did. I chose the Young Women's Resource Center in Des Moines, Iowa. They're a nonprofit that supports, educates, and advocates for girls and young women ages 10 to 24. Their whole goal is to make sure that these young women become strong, self-confident, and successful. And if you know me at all, you know that aligns with my goals as well. If you're interested and would like to donate, check them out at ywrc.org and donate today. And remember, don't forget to STFU and listen every once in a while. Thanks.
All right, Elias, the floor is yours. Tim and I will shut the F up, and you say whatever you want without us being able to say anything.
Well, now that I have the floor, about time. I number one, I appreciate you guys reaching out. I love to engage with people and to have an impact. That's the biggest thing that I think is what I do. I'm a big advice guy. I'm a big just through personal experience. I love working with kids mostly. I just can't understate how important it is not to be a jerk to people as you're growing up. I'm going to be going back to Manson here in a little less than a month for senior awards night to give out a $10,000 check and a scholarship that I do a golf tournament for. And I always tell the kids the same thing. I go, this is like your last chance to hit the reset button. If, you were a jerk or a bully, or you maybe should have helped somebody out and you didn't, like, you get the slate clean. You don't get that chance a whole lot in your life. Maybe after college you get that again, but your best chance to start anew on the foundation you have is to start now. And that's the great thing about getting older and moving to new places and meeting new people. And I've had the opportunity to do that through my career, whether it be here, Phoenix or Reno, or even back here again. I've made mistakes along the way too about, how I've treated people. I've never been, somebody I think people wouldn't want to be around, but you can always be better, and you can always be better to those around you, and always think of a way to mentor people. And to my family, God, I wish I'm not complacent anymore when it comes to my duties as a father and a husband. But I think career goals and things that impacted me were something that I missed out on some time, and I can't get that back. But what I can do now is be there. I've got a kid that's going to be a freshman in high school this next year. I've got a daughter going to be in junior high this next year. And then this is my last year with my 4-year-old before she goes to kindergarten after this year. And so I've got 3 pivotal moves in my life with my kids that are so important. And a lot of the reasons I've been able to reset is because I've asked for help. I know that I could be better. And luckily I've got an amazing wife who reminds me when I need to do that. Arizona State is still the best college in the country. I'll say that without any qualms because I know it. I've lived it. And get out and see the world. That's the other big thing I like to tell people. The best decision I ever made. I could have fit in right at home at Ames and been a proud Cyclone, but my experience just cutting the cord, man, and moving away was huge. In seeing the world and meeting new people that I'm still very close with, and your network is so important with that. I've got people that I knew in college that still bring me back for consulting in different ways. But just be a positive, good person as much as you can. Be the person that people can lean on, even when you don't feel like you got a leg to stand on. Like every interaction you have with a person, whether it be a person that's parked next to you at a red light or somebody you're sitting next to at the bank, that might be their worst day, and something you say or do could change their course. I think about that stuff a lot. And so I try to live that every day. I just try to be a positive force that people remember for all the right reasons. Doesn't always happen. And everybody's got bad days, but got to get over yourself. You got to get over yourself and know that there's a bigger picture, bigger plan. Be a good memory. I do this golf tournament every year in June. And that's my big spiel every year is like, you know what? We get one weekend. This is our weekend to laugh, to shoot them up, whatever we want to do. Just make sure that when you're laughing with somebody, you lock yourself in that moment as much as you do when something bad happens and all you are is consumed with that. Consume yourself with those positive people and those moments you have with others, because that is what gets you through the really crappy times. And I feel like we need to do a better job of that. I've been working on that for years now, is lose yourself in the moment, as Eminem said, right?
There you go.
Lose yourself, not in the bad stuff, lose yourself in the good stuff. Don't take those for granted, because the negative stuff always is stuff that you remember more than the positive stuff. So, and that's my spiel to people is it's like, this is our moment, to just have fun, just laugh, and when you hug somebody, think about how much you're squeezing them, or you give somebody a high five, just live in those moments as much as you do with stuff that's not so great that you definitely don't forget.
Excellent. Wow, that's a lot of really good advice. I did a career day recently with middle schoolers, and aside from them thinking that I was 65 years old, I told them when I told them how long it had been since I'd been in middle school, and it like the second I even just referenced the 1900s at all, but to say like 1991, and they were like. Their jaws hit the floor and they thought I was a billion years old.
You remember the Oregon Trail?
Yeah, exactly. They just had questions about the Civil War. But so what was it like at the founding of America? No, but that's much more smart and articulate. I really like what you just be a good memory. I think that's.
What's cool is that coming up here. Not this Monday, but next Monday, I do bus stop dad. So all the kids, like where we're parked, all the kids that's the bus stop. And so Bacon Fest, Brooks Reynolds and I are pretty good buddies. They're going to come out with Berkwood Farms because I try to make bacon for the kids every once in a while. Shoot hoops. I bring out music every morning. just to get them going on a good day. We're gonna prep some bacon for the neighborhood and just have something fun for the kids. And I try to do that every day because my daughter is at the bus stop, and then my son goes an hour before that for middle school. But it's just trying to practice what you preach with, like, having good moments. It's like start these kids off on a high note and then send them down from there. So there'll be some awesome videos posted about that, and hashtag bus stop dad.
Fun.
Nice. Yeah, I was gonna ask, is there anything that you would like to plug before we let you go?
No, I just you can follow me at ejohnson news on Twitter. I kind of an open book with all the stuff I've talked about here with there, and I love the engagement. I love when people reach out and ask me questions or have feedback. Sometimes it's not great feedback, but I don't know the ties I wear. It's trying to go off my coat.
I found you really approachable. That was kind of the point of asking you on, was because you are so much of an interactive and you give people time, and that's something that I appreciated. So I appreciate you coming on, Elias.
It's been a blast. I appreciate the opportunity to just talk about life and stuff, right? Because we all, like you said,
that's right. One of these days we'll hook back up down at Rob's down at Revelton, and we'll have a drink. So
all right.
He was down there at the Rye launch, and I think I missed you by like a half an hour. I might have been there while you were there.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
No,
well, he was lucky.
As long as I could. I was there before the doors opened.
There you go.
He heard you were coming in the room and he immediately got the heck out of there.
Okay, we gotta go.
Well, no, Elias, again, I echo what Chris said. Very grateful for you coming on. We very much appreciate it. This humble little podcast, sharing your story and sharing your wisdom with our listeners. Very much appreciate that. And with that, Chris, unless there's anything else you want to add, I'll go and wrap us up.
Let's go. We're good.
All right. Well, again, we thank you guys once again for listening to Old Man Strength. You have now wasted the better part of 2 hours listening to us. We very much appreciate that. Please listen to all of the podcasts on the Three Beards Media. There have been some really great ones lately. The Fill in the Blank pod. Anya is such a great host, and Mackenzie is just fantastic. Listening to the Hot Mess Happy Hour argue about the importance of a flat sheet on a bed is worth it alone. A lot of great stuff going on within our universe. So many more things. Please check out the website. Please go ahead if you want to support us through purchasing merch. Please, we appreciate that. And again, a thank you to our sponsors with Revelton Distilling and Kyle Lehman at Wintrust, and of course Betfred Sportsbook. Very excited to have them on. And with that, folks, thank you very much. We will see you guys next time.